This happened to me and my partner last spring. We'd been planning a weekend away for a while. Nothing fancy, just a break from work, screens, and the daily noise. Found a small Airbnb just outside a quiet lakeside town. A standalone house with a nice deck, wood stove, and enough space to breathe. The place looked great online. Clean, bright, no weird reviews. The host seemed professional, responsive. I'd stayed in enough rentals over the years to know what to avoid, and this one didn't raise any red flags. We got there late on a Friday. The drive was long, and by the time we unpacked, it was already dark. Inside, everything looked just like the photos. Neutral colors, generic wall art, a little too perfect. Like someone had tried to make it feel lived in, but it didn't. We opened a bottle of wine, made dinner, put on music. Nothing felt off at first. The bedroom was on the second floor, tucked beneath a sloped ceiling with a skylight above the bed. The mattress was firm, linens clean. But something about the smoke detector above us caught my eye. It was mounted directly over the center of the bed. Normal at first glance, but it didn't match the others in the house. The casing was newer, the plastic a different shade of white. It had a tiny dark circle at the bottom, like a pinhole. I couldn't explain why, but I felt something shift in my stomach. The next morning, I stood on a chair to get a closer look, pulled the unit down gently. There were wires, sure, but nothing connected to the ceiling. No battery compartment. And behind the faceplate, a small lens. It was a camera. Everything froze for a moment. I could hear the hum of the fridge downstairs, birds outside, my own breathing. Tight and shallow. I didn't tell my partner right away. I just handed it to them. We didn't panic. We moved methodically, searching every room. Took down the other detectors. Found a second camera in the living room, tucked behind the vents of the stereo system. Another above the bathroom mirror, angled downward. We didn't know how many there were, or for how long they'd been recording. We packed our things in silence. Called the police once we were in the car, already on the highway. I remember my hands shaking on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from rage. The investigation took weeks. We gave statements, shared the photos we took. Later, a detective told us they found at least 6 hidden cameras throughout the house, each one streaming to an encrypted server. It turned out the host, an older man with no criminal history, had been recording guests for years. Not just us. Dozens, maybe more. Couples, families, even solo travelers. He sold the footage on private forums online. They eventually tracked down his equipment. Hard drives full of names and dates, folders organized by guest. Footage categorized and labeled. I still think about it sometimes. What was filmed, where it ended up, who saw it. The idea of being watched in a place that was supposed to be safe, private, ours. It sticks with you. We haven't stayed in an Airbnb since. Now, before we unpack anywhere, we check every smoke detector, every vent, every plug, every corner of every room. Because once you've been watched without knowing it, you start to see the world differently. And you never really stop looking over your shoulder. This happened when I was living alone in a small apartment complex just outside the city. It was one of those older buildings with thin walls, narrow hallways, and a front entrance that always stuck just a little when you pulled it open. I'd been there for about 6 months. I lived on the 3rd floor, apartment 3B. Directly above me was 4B. I knew this because I could hear the footsteps, soft and steady most of the time, late at night especially. The building wasn't noisy, but you got used to the sounds. People moving around, flushing toilets, the occasional door slam. It made the place feel lived in. There was a man who lived above me. I saw him now and then in the stairwell or the hallway, always at the same time of day, early morning or late at night, like he was trying to avoid people. He was tall, thin, always in the same clothes, dark hoodie, old jeans, hood usually up. He didn't speak much, just gave a nod, sometimes a tight smile. He looked nervous, the kind of nervousness that isn't about shyness, more like he was always waiting for something bad to happen. Still, I was polite. Always said hi when we crossed paths. I figured maybe he had anxiety or just preferred to keep to himself. And honestly, I liked knowing someone else was around. It made the building feel safer. Then, one day, the sound stopped. No more footsteps above. No toilet flushing. No creaking floorboards or the soft thud of drawers opening. Just silence. At first, I thought maybe he'd gone on a trip. But a week passed. Then, 2. I didn't hear or see anything. The hallway light near his door stayed off. That's when something started to gnaw at me. The quiet wasn't just silence, it was absence. The kind of absence you don't notice until you realize what should be there and isn't. So I asked around. I started with the woman across the hall. I figured she'd know something. I kept it casual, just asked if she'd seen the guy from upstairs lately. She stared at me for a second, confused, then said something that didn't land right. "There's no one living above you." I laughed, thinking she was joking. But she didn't smile. She just shook her head. That apartment, 4B, had been vacant for months. I stood there, waiting for her to change her mind, to say, "Oh wait, I forgot about that guy." But she didn't. She just looked at me, like I was asking about a ghost. I thanked her and backed away. Went back inside, sat down on my couch, and tried to process what she'd said. I told myself there had to be a mistake. Maybe he was subletting. Maybe the landlord forgot to update records. Maybe I was wrong. But then I remembered the night I came home late, around 2 a.m., and saw him standing at the top of the stairs, just outside the 4B door. Not going in, not coming out, just standing, watching. Or the time I passed him in the hall and he flinched like I'd startled him, like he hadn't expected to be seen. The next day, I went upstairs and knocked on the door to 4B. No answer. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. Not even the hum of electricity. I called the building manager and asked casually if the upstairs unit was still empty. He confirmed it was. Had been for a while. No recent viewings. No one had keys but him. I didn't sleep well after that. And then, about a week later, something happened that still makes my skin crawl. I woke up around 3 a.m. to a sound. Faint, familiar. Footsteps. Above me. Exactly where his room would have been. I laid there frozen, listening. The pacing started slow, then stopped. Then a dragging sound, like furniture being moved. I stayed awake until sunrise. When I got up the courage to check, I found a strange smell near the ceiling in my closet. Faint, musty, like something that had been wet and left to rot. I moved out 2 weeks later. Never got a straight answer from anyone. Never saw that man again. But I still wonder, what was he doing in that apartment? And if he didn't live there, why did I see him with a key? This happened last winter, not long after we brought our daughter home from the hospital. First child. First, everything. We were running on 2 hours of sleep at a time and surviving mostly on coffee and instinct. The baby monitor was one of the more expensive things we bought. Audio and video, night vision, Wi-Fi enabled, so we could check in from our phones. It gave us peace of mind, especially in those early weeks when every sound felt like an emergency. Her crib was in the nursery down the hall, just 10 steps away, but in the middle of the night, it might as well have been a mile. We kept the monitor beside our bed, and the volume always turned up. It started on a Thursday. Around 2:40 a.m., I woke up, not from the baby crying, but from the monitor. There was a sound, faint at first. I thought it might be static, but then I realized it was a voice. Someone was singing. Not a melody I recognized. The voice was soft, low, almost like a lullaby, but the words weren't English. I sat up in bed, trying to process what I was hearing. My partner stirred beside me, groggy, confused, until they heard it too. We both froze. The voice continued, slow and steady, humming in places, drifting in and out like it was right there in the room. The baby wasn't crying. I grabbed the monitor, stared at the screen. The night vision was active, grainy, greenish. The crib, the mobile, the small shape of our daughter, still and peaceful under her blanket. But no one else. No shadows, no movement, no sign of anything unusual. The voice stopped just as suddenly as it started. We rushed into the nursery, lights on, hearts pounding. The room was exactly as we'd left it. Window shut, door still latched, nothing out of place. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I contacted the manufacturer. They said it was likely a signal issue, interference from another monitor, a crossed connection. But we didn't live in an apartment. Our neighbors weren't close, and no one we knew had a baby monitor even remotely similar to ours. We reset the system, changed the Wi-Fi password, updated firmware, did everything they told us to do. The next few nights were quiet. Then it happened again. Same time, same voice, same melody, though this time the words were slightly different. The tone was darker, slower. But what made it worse was that the camera panned. Not sharply, not with any sound, just a slow gliding shift to the left, until it wasn't focused on the crib anymore, but on the corner of the room. An empty corner. I felt a chill crawl across my skin. We hadn't touched the camera. It wasn't motion activated. We pulled the plug that night. Disconnected everything. The police came the next day. We didn't expect much, but they took it seriously. A tech team checked our router. That's when they found it. The connection log showed multiple remote accesses to the baby monitor system. Someone had bypassed the default firewall settings, logged in, more than once. They'd been watching, listening. There was no sign of forced entry, no physical break-in. Whoever it was had only entered digitally, but they'd been in our home in the most intimate way possible, streaming our baby, speaking through the monitor. No one was ever caught. The IP address led nowhere. A burner setup, rerouted through multiple layers. We replaced the entire system, switched to an analog monitor, hardwired everything. I still wake up sometimes at 2:40 a.m., half expecting to hear that voice again. I think about what might have happened if we hadn't noticed, if we hadn't unplugged it, because someone found a way in, and for a while, we didn't even know they were there. This happened to me last summer, and I haven't driven the same way since. I work in IT, consulting mostly, so my days are pretty structured. Same clients, same routes, same early mornings. I leave my apartment around 7:15 a.m., grab coffee at the same gas station, and hit the highway by 7:30. At first, I didn't think anything of the white car. It was a compact sedan, plain, clean, no bumper stickers, no dents, just there. Usually a few cars behind me, sometimes closer. Nothing weird, until it kept happening. At first, it was just a flicker in the back of my mind. That same car, again. But traffic's traffic. People commute, roads overlap. I let it go. But after 3 weeks, the feeling changed. I'd see the car not just on the highway, but pulling into the same gas station. Sitting 2 rows back, in the same lane. Hanging back at red lights. Never passing me. Never falling too far behind. I mentioned it to a coworker offhandedly, just a joke about my daily carpool buddy. But saying it out loud made it click. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a pattern. So I tested it. One morning, I skipped the gas station, took a left instead of a right. My route should have been broken, but when I checked my rearview mirror 10 minutes later, the white sedan was still there. Closer this time. The next day, I left earlier. Then later. Took side streets. Switched highways. Still there. Same car, same distance. Never pulling up beside me. Never backing off. That's when the fear kicked in. Not panic, paranoia. I couldn't prove anything. But I started thinking about what I did every day. The routines. How easy it would be for someone to track my patterns if they were really trying. A week later, I made a split-second decision. Instead of heading toward the city, I veered off onto a rural exit. A dead road I knew ended at an old service lot. No reason for anyone to follow me there. The white car followed. No hesitation. My chest tightened. I could feel it, my pulse in my neck, my grip on the wheel turning white. I pulled into the gravel lot, slammed my car into park, and stepped out fast, ready to confront whoever was behind the wheel. But before I could take more than 2 steps, the white car peeled out, tires screeching. It didn't even slow at the corner, just bolted back the way we came. I didn't chase it. I stood there, listening to the engine fade. I went straight to the police, filed a report, explained everything, dates, routes, the car, gave them the dashcam footage I'd started collecting, just in case. They took me seriously. One officer asked to take a look under my vehicle. That's when they found it. A GPS tracker, duct-taped near the rear axle. Small, discreet, battery-powered. They said it had probably been there for weeks, maybe longer. The investigation is still technically open, but I haven't heard anything since. The device wasn't registered, no prints, nothing to trace. I don't know who it was, or why, but someone was watching me, following me, tracking every move I made. Maybe they were waiting for the right moment. Maybe I interrupted whatever was supposed to happen. I check under my car now, every time. Different routes, different schedules, and I don't trust quiet cars anymore, especially the white ones, because I still don't know what they wanted, and that's the part that keeps me up at night. This happened not long after I moved into a new place, a quiet street in the kind of neighborhood where people mow their lawns on Sundays and wave when they back out of the driveway. It wasn't fancy, just normal, comfortable. A step up from the apartment life I was used to. My house shared a property line with the one next door, a slightly older home that had been empty for a while before a couple moved in. I didn't meet them right away. Just saw them unloading boxes one morning. Mid-40s maybe, kept to themselves. I figured they were like me, minding their own business. The first time I heard the sound, I was getting ready for bed. It was faint, just barely there, like a whimper or a low cry. I assumed it was a TV, maybe a kid having a nightmare. The walls between houses in these old suburbs aren't always great, and sound carries in strange ways at night. I went to bed. Didn't think twice, but I kept hearing it. Almost every night, sometime after midnight. Never for long. 10, maybe 15 minutes. A soft, muffled crying or strained voice, like someone pleading or trying to call out through a wall. Always from the same direction. The neighbor's basement. I tried to ignore it, turned up the fan, put in earplugs, told myself it was just late-night noise from an old house. Maybe someone with a medical issue, maybe a pet. But it didn't stop. It got worse. The sounds became more frequent, not louder, but more desperate. A kind of quiet panic threaded through the walls. I knocked on their door one afternoon, just to say hi, casually bring up the noise. Nobody answered. I left it alone for a few more days, but my gut wouldn't let it go. Eventually, I called the police, explained what I'd been hearing, gave them the address. They came by, talked to the neighbors, spent 10 minutes on the porch, didn't go inside. Later, the officer called me back, said they checked it out. Everything seemed fine. The couple said they didn't hear anything, didn't know what I was talking about. That was it. But the sounds didn't stop. I started recording them, just audio, using my phone pressed against the wall. Most nights it was too quiet to catch. But one night, I got it, clear as day. A woman's voice, weak, cracking, not screaming, just begging. I played it back over and over. It made my skin crawl. The next time the neighbors left, I saw them drive off together, middle of the day. I made a decision I still can't fully explain. Their backyard gate was unlocked. The basement windows were low, old, partly covered with wood panels. One of them had a loose hinge. I slipped it open and dropped inside. The basement was unfinished. Dirt smell, concrete floor, dust hanging in the air. At first, it looked empty. But then I saw the door, a smaller room built into the corner, padlocked from the outside. I pried the lock. Took longer than I expected. My hands were shaking. Inside, the air was thick, damp. She was there, thin, pale, hair matted, sitting on a mattress, surrounded by buckets, scraps of food, old blankets. She didn't scream when she saw me, just looked up slowly, like she couldn't believe I was real. I called 911 from her porch. I didn't leave until they arrived. Turns out she was the previous owner, the older woman who'd moved out a few months before I arrived. The couple had bought the house under the pretense of caring for her as distant relatives. They told everyone she'd gone to a retirement home out of state. She'd been in that basement for nearly 4 months. They were arrested. She was taken to the hospital. The police never apologized for not taking me seriously. They don't really do that. But I don't sleep well anymore. Because for weeks, I did nothing. For weeks, she cried in the dark, just a few meters away. And nobody listened. This happened a few years ago, on a cold, rainy night in late October. I was driving home from a work trip. 3 hours of empty roads, windshield wipers on full speed, and a creeping fog that blurred everything outside the beams of my headlights. I was on one of those old county roads. No gas stations, no streetlights, just forest and wet pavement. It was past midnight when I saw her. She was standing just off the shoulder, near a road sign that had been eaten by rust, soaked from head to toe. No umbrella, no bag. She looked young, early 20s maybe. Her hair was plastered to her face, and she had on this pale dress that stuck to her like tissue paper in the rain. I slowed down before I even made the decision. She didn't wave, didn't move. Just stood there, staring straight ahead. I pulled over and rolled down the passenger window. She didn't look at me, just stepped forward and opened the door like she'd been waiting. Sat down, closed it. She handed me a piece of paper, folded, damp around the edges. It had an address on it. No name, no explanation. I asked if she was okay, if she needed help. She didn't respond, didn't even look my way, just kept her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the road ahead. I told myself she was in shock, that something had happened, and she just needed to get home. I didn't push. We drove in silence. The address was about 20 minutes out, deeper into the hills, where the houses got farther apart and the trees pressed closer to the road. My GPS barely worked out there, and more than once I thought about turning back. But something about her presence kept me going. Not threatening, not even eerie, really. Just heavy. When we reached the house, it looked like something from another time. Tall, narrow, 2 stories. Paint peeling off in sheets. No lights, No car in the driveway. She opened the door and stepped out without a word. Started walking toward the porch. I watched her in the mirror. The way she moved, slow, almost uncertain, like every step was being measured. She reached the front steps, paused, then disappeared into the dark. I waited for a light to turn on, for the front door to creak open. Nothing. Just rain on the windshield and my own shallow breathing. Eventually, I drove off. Told myself she got in safely. Told myself it wasn't my business. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling. So I looked up the address. There was no listing, no recent sales, no residents. The house had been vacant for over 12 years. Neighbors, when asked, said it had been empty since the previous family moved out. They didn't know why, just that no one ever stayed there long. I went back to my car later that day, mostly out of habit. That's when I saw it. A small folded note tucked under the passenger side floor mat. Same handwriting as the paper she'd handed me. Only one sentence. "You've helped me. Now I'm free." I still don't know what happened that night, who she was, what I really saw, but I've never picked up another hitchhiker. And I don't drive that road anymore. That's all for today, folks. If you want to see more of this creepy content, click on the video on screen.